Welcome to another of our GST titled Philosophy and Logic. This material is from National Open University of Nigeria. My name is Dan Asukwo, your instructor. Are you writing any of the GSTs soon, or you want to improve your knowledge on philosophy and logic? If so, let us know on the comment section so that we can help you out. If you are a noun student or from any other universities, this will be very useful for you. Please do well to share it with others as well as on your study groups. If this is your first time of coming across our videos, why not do well to subscribe, like, comment, and share for others too to benefit. Module 4, Fallacies and Definitions. Unit 1, Fallacies, Part 1, 1.0, Introduction. This study unit introduces you to the definition and classification of fallacies. Our emphasis here will be particularly on fallacies involving irrelevant premises. 2.0, Intended Learning Outcomes. By the end of this unit, you will be able to classify fallacies, evaluate fallacies. It is hoped that at the end of this unit, you should be able to define and classify fallacies, know major formal fallacies such as affirming the consequent, denying the antecedent, fallacy of four terms, existential fallacy, and fallacy of exclusive premises. 3.0, Main Content. 3.1, Definition and Classification of Fallacies. Some arguments sometimes look so good and convincing, however, when we critically examine them, we realize that they are weak, deceptive, strong, or full of errors. What logician therefore always do is to explain the causes of errors in arguments and to avoid them in reasoning. The best way to do this is to first recognize these errors of reasoning and avoid them completely. This is because deceptive arguments are capable of misleading. You need to know that these kinds of reasoning sometimes look convincing and logically correct. Without adequate carefulness, one can accept them as true, valid, and correct reasoning. These forms of reasoning are regarded as being fallacious. One fact that you must note here is that fallacious argument or reasoning is not necessarily an invalid argument. Rather, it is an argument that appears sufficiently acceptable, but which contains errors. OKE and Audu, 2006, 107. Usually a fallacy is committed in the process of moving from the premises of an argument to its conclusion. Because of these errors or mistakes, the premises do not justify the conclusion, or there is no proper link between the premises and the conclusion. In short, a fallacy is an error in reasoning that tends to be psychologically persuasive. It is an invalid argument that has the deceptive appearance of being valid. According to Uduma o Uduma, 2015, the classification of fallacies can be dated back to Aristotle, who gave two principal divisions, namely, A. Fallacies due to the misuse of language, and B. Those which arose from defects of thought rather than of language. But the common classification are formal fallacies and informal fallacies. 3. 1.1. Formal fallacies. This kind of fallacies are concerned with the structure or form of an argument, rather than the content. Formal fallacies are also called pure fallacy. What you must note about arguments in this fallacy is that they always violate a rule of the logical system of which the argument is a part. In this regard, invalid deductive argument is formally fallacious. Thus, formal fallacies are errors that evolve from neglect or deviation from formal rule of logic, which simply holds that premises must adequately support the conclusion, and that if the premises of an argument is true, the conclusion must also be true. 3 examples of these fallacies are: 1. The formal fallacy associated with the deviation from the modus ponens rule. This is called the fallacy of affirming the consequent. 2. The formal fallacy that is associated with the deviation from the modus tollens rule, which is also known as the fallacy of denying the antecedent. 3. The formal fallacy of foreterm. 4. Existential fallacy. 5. Formal fallacy of exclusive premises. 3. 1.2. Fallacy of affirming the consequent. This is committed when the formal rule of affirming the antecedent or modus ponens is violated. You should know that the antecedent of any argument is the first part of the argument, while the consequent is the latter part. They are like cause and effect. The rule of modus ponens states that in an argument, if a material conditional statement, the first premise, and its antecedent, the second premise, are true, then its consequent must be true. Akilik, 1999, 16. Thus, in the fallacy, the second premise of the argument affirms the consequent instead of the antecedent, while the conclusion affirms the antecedent rather than the consequent. For example, if Tinubu is a leader, then Tinubu is a politician. Tinubu is a politician, therefore Tinubu is a leader. Schematically, we have if P, then QQ, therefore P. Here the argument runs contrary to the rules of modus ponens. Commonsensical, the second premise and the conclusion are faulty when compared to a properly constituted modus ponens rule. It is possible that Tinubu is not a leader, and yet he may be a politician. This is shown below. If Tinubu is a leader, then Tinubu is a politician. Tinubu is a leader. Therefore, Tinubu is a politician. Schematically, we have if P, then QP, therefore Q. In this argument, unlike the first, the second premise is an affirmation of the antecedent. 1.3. Fallacy of denying the antecedent. This fallacy occurs when the rule of modus tollens is violated. The rule of modus tollens holds that in an argument, if the material conditional statement, first premise, is true and its consequent is false, then its antecedent, conclusion, must be false. The fallacy of denying the antecedent takes the form of an argument in which one premise is a conditional, and the other is the negation of its antecedent, from which the negation of the consequent is deduced as the conclusion of the argument. For example, if Tinubu is a leader, then Tinubu is a politician. Tinubu is not a politician. Therefore, Tinubu is not a leader. Schematically, we have if P, then Q, not P, therefore not Q. From this example, the second premise and conclusion are faulty. 1.4. Fallacy of four term. An argument in a categorical logic commits the fallacy of four terms if either there are more than three terms in the argument, or a term is assigned different meanings at different points in the argument. 1.5. Existential fallacy. In categorical logic, a syllogistic argument commits the existential fallacy if its conclusion is a particular proposition, and both of its premises are universal propositions. It is fallacious to derive a conclusion of a proposition from the argument whose premises are universal propositions. For example, all Nigerians are human beings. All human beings are mortal. Therefore, Delagiwa, a Nigerian, was mortal. 1.6. Fallacy of exclusive premises. This fallacy occurs in any form of reasoning when the rule that every valid categorical syllogism must have at least one affirmative premise, A or I, is violated. The major characteristic of the fallacy of exclusive premises is that both premises are negative propositions, E or O. For example, no goats are human beings. Some human beings are not rational. Therefore, some goats are not rational. 2.0. Informal fallacies. This fallacy is also known as material fallacy. It is informed of any argument that is psychologically persuasive but not logically persuasive. In informal fallacies, there are no mistakes in the formal structure of arguments, rather they are rooted in the failure of the evidence to be relevant to the conclusion, or in some injustice and ambiguity. Adegboyega, 2010, 71. Informal fallacies rests on the content of the argument. Unlike formal fallacy, no any coded rules is violated. Individuals may fall into this error because of his or her carelessness, coupled with inattention or being misled by language problems. There are different types of informal fallacies, and these are 1. Fallacies of ambiguity. 2. Fallacies of weak induction. 3. Fallacies of relevance, and 4. Fallacies of presumption. For this section, we shall focus on fallacies of ambiguity and fallacies of relevance. The remaining two fallacies of wheel induction and fallacies of presumption shall be in the subsequent unit. 2.1. Fallacies of ambiguity. These are linguistic fallacies. These fallacies occur when ambiguous words, phrase, or statements occur in arguments without carefully attending to the ambiguity. You must know that ambiguous words are words that has more than one meaning in a statement, or when it can be used in more than one way. For instance, the word file can be used to refer to metal tool with roughened surface or cover case for keeping papers together for reference purpose, and it can refer to line of persons or one behind the other. We shall focus here only on the 4 major fallacies of ambiguity. 1. Fallacy of equivocation. There are some words that contain more than one meaning. The fallacy of equivocation occurs when such a word is used in a manner that implies different meanings or senses of the word within the same context. For instance, only man is rational, but no woman is a man. Therefore, no woman is rational. This is a fallacy of equivocation because the word man is used with two different senses within the same context. In the first sentence, the word man means humans, while in the second it means male humans. 2. Fallacy of amphibole. The fallacies of amphibole and ambiguity are very similar. The only difference is that in the fallacy of amphibole, the double meaning is due to syntactic or sentence structure, such as a grammatical error or a mistake in punctuation. The fallacy of amphibole is more subtle and harder to detect than that of equivocation. It mostly occurs when we misinterpret someone's original statement or intention. Here are typical cases. Tunde removed the egg from the cup, so Samuel broke it. Although we know the meaning of the word it, but what this word refers to is not clear to us. What did Samuel break? Is it the glass cup or the egg? 3. Fallacy of composition. There are two major ways of committing the fallacy of composition. These are 1. When a part is identified with the whole, that is, the parts have the attribute X, therefore the whole has attribute X. For instance, I. Each of the parts of this car engine is very light, therefore the car engine is very light. 2. Each player on the football team is outstanding, hence the team itself is outstanding. The fallacy of composition is committed here because even though the car engine is made up of very light parts, but when put together the car engines it becomes very heavy. It is the same with the football team. Even though each of the players is outstanding and there is a lack of teamwork or insufficient opportunity to practice together, the team may not be outstanding. 2. The second kind of the fallacy of composition is committed when there is confusion between the distributive and collective use of general terms. For example, elephants eat more than humans. So, elephant taken as a group eat more than humans taken as a group. There is a fallacy of composition here because in the premises, elephant eat more than humans, the attribute of eating more than is predicated distributive. That is, each individual elephant is said to eat more than any individual human eats. However, in the conclusion, the attribute eating more than is predicated collectively. That is, elephant taken as a group are said to eat more than humans taken as a group, which is not true, because there are so many more humans than elephant. 4. Fallacy of division. The fallacy of division is nothing more than the opposite of composition. In the fallacy of division, if the whole has the attribute X, therefore the parts must have the attribute X as well. Example, the airplane is heavy, so each of its part is heavy. There is a fallacy of division here because some of the parts of a heavy airplane may be very light. Here is an example of the second type of division fallacy. The soccer team is excellent. Hence, each member of the team is excellent. There is a fallacy of division here because a team may be excellent due to teamwork and few outstanding players, and yet have members who are not themselves excellent players. 3. 2.2. Fallacies of relevance. These fallacies present the premises of arguments in such a way that their conclusion could be doubted. That is, given the premises of an argument, we do not have a strong conviction or confidence for accepting the conclusion of such argument. Some of these fallacies are discussed below. A. Fallacy of attacking the person. Argumentum ad hominem. The main business of this fallacy is to attack the person who advances an argument rather than providing a rational critique of the argument itself. The attacker's main objective is to make its assertion acceptable. This fallacy is informed of character assassination. For instance, Mr. A, President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua of the Federal Territory of Nigeria will be the next African Union chairman. Mr. B, Mr. Umaru Musa Yar'Adua is the president of one of the most corrupted countries in the world. Therefore, it is impossible for him to become the future African Union chairman. An argument against the person does not always involve outright verbal abuse. Subtle ways are sometimes used, but with the sole aim of discrediting an opponent by suggesting that the opponent's judgment is distorted by some factor in his or her circumstances. This form of argument is sometimes called the circumstantial ad hominem. For instance, during the celebration of their marriage, Mr. and Mrs. Kula refused to serve beer to their guests. They claimed that no born-again child of God would either drink or serve beer to other persons. Here you can see that Mr. and Mrs. Kunlu commit the circumstantial form of the argument and homonym fallacy. You should always remember that the attack in the argument against the person can take three forms. 1. Abusive, direct personal attack on the opponent. 2. Circumstantial, attempt to discredit by calling attention to the circumstances or situation of the opponent. 3. Tu quoque. This is committed when, in an argument rather than defending oneself, the arguer is being found guilty. 4. The fallacy of attacking affiliation. This is occurring when, in an argument, it is concluded that a people should either be accepted or rejected because he belongs to a group or association which one does not like or that is unpopular with one's audience. B. Appeal to force, argumentum ad baculum. The word baculum is a Latin word which stands for staff. Here, the word staff is seen as a symbol of power. Argumentum ad baculum fallacy is mostly used whenever a conclusion is defended by a threat to the well, being of those who do not accept it. The threat can be physical, moral, or psychological. It can be implicit or explicit. Here is the case of a physical threat. Godwin, I don't want to see you driving any car to campus whenever you have my class. Do you realize I am your teacher and I am the alpha in this course? I am the one who will determine whether you pass or fail at the end of the semester. It is better you comply or else you will fail this course. You can see here that there is no logical link, the threatened, you will fail on the conclusion. Of course you will agree that there is nothing bad in Godwin a car to campus, but it is probable that the threat might induce Godwin to accept the conclusion. Another example is the case of a psychological threat. Listen, Valerie, I know you disagree with my view about the building project. You have made your disagreement clear to everyone. Well, it's time for you to see that you are mistaken. Let me get right to the point. I know you have been lying to your husband about where you go on Wednesday afternoons. Unless you want him to know where you really go, it's time for you to realize that I have been right about the building project all along. You follow me? Layman 2002, p. 127. You can see here that even though the threat to expose the lie has no relationship with the building project, it may still work because fear is a strong motivator, and it can influence someone's thinking. C. Appeal to popular feeling/mob appeal, argumentum ad populum. Remember that populum is a Latin word which stands for people or notion, so argumentum ad populum occurs when you try to persuade someone or a group by appealing to their emotion, feeling, and sentiments. This is mostly used in political campaigns, public debates, and advertising. Here is a typical case of political campaign. I look out at you all and I tell you, I am proud to be here. Proud to belong to a party that stands for what is good for America. Proud to cast my lot with the kind of people who make this nation great. Proud to stand with men and women who can get our nation back on its feet. Yes, there are those who criticize us, who label our view of trade agreements as protectionist. But when I look at you hard-working people, I know we are right, and the critics are wrong. Layman 2002, 128. You can see that the sole purpose of this speech is to persuade the crowd no matter what. It is fallacious because the premise is to the effect that I am proud to be associated with you, and you are hard-working people, are irrelevant to the conclusion. Our view of trade agreements is right. Also bear in mind that you do not necessarily need to address a large group before you commit this kind of fallacy. Whatever you try to convince by appealing to the need of or acceptance of your view by other people makes you to commit the fallacy. Here is an example. Miss Riley, are you saying that President Bush made a moral error when he decided to go to war with Iraq? I cannot believe my ears. That is not how Americans feel, not true Americans anyway. You are an American, aren't you, Miss Riley? Layman 2002, 128. This is a fallacy because there is no logical connection between the fact that Miss Riley is an American. Therefore, Iraq war must be justified. D. Appeal to pity, argumentum ad misericordiam. Misericordiam is a Latin word that stands for pity or mercy. So argumentum ad misericordiam is a fallacy that attempts to support a conclusion simply by evoking pity in one's audience, even though the statements that evoke the pity are logically unrelated to the conclusion. For example, I want to build more schools, more hospitals, and create more employment opportunity. If you don't vote for me this second term, I cannot achieve these, therefore, vote for me the second term. Adegboyega, 2010, 79. The appeal to pity is mostly used by politicians during campaign for election and by lawyers. The lawyer's main objective is to get the court to accept the conclusion that a client is innocent or at least to obtain a reduction in the measure of punishment. E. Fallacy of irrelevant conclusion, ignoratio elenchi. This fallacy is also called fallacy of ignoring the issue. This is because the conclusion that is drawn in the argument is irrelevant to the premises, that is non sequitur. For example, the members of the National Assembly have been accused of official misconducts. Therefore, the Assembly complex should be closed down. F. Red herring fallacy. It is committed when the person responding to an argument fails to address whichever issues the arguer has raised. In a way, the respondent distracts the arguer's attention because the respondent is evasive. Example, Ocon. The use of condom during sex should be encouraged. This is because it prevents unwanted pregnancy among youths. Eckett. Mr. Ocon, are you a Christian or a Muslim? Ocon. I am neither a Christian nor a Muslim. I'm a traditionalist. Here, Eckett did not address the issue that was raised and Ocon had raised in his argument, rather he only distracts his attention. J. Fallacy of accident. This fallacy is committed when a claim is based on a rule that is generally valid, but the arguer fails to see the case at hand as an exception. It is common among legalists, moralists, educationists, and other social theorists who always infer answer to specific human issues from some absolute moral, legal, educational, and other social rules. Ibid. For example, these set of people can reason that given that lying is bad, and then one should not tell lies, even to save life of an innocent being. Or given that the idea of murder is bad, it is unhuman to commit abortion, even if it is to save life of the mother, or even when the fetus is to be epileptically defective. 4.0 Conclusion. Fallacies, ambiguity, and relevance are things worthy of note in our daily activities. 5.0 Summary. To get the best of this unit, you may need to repay it again. Also drop a comment on the comment section stating the important lesson learned.